Look at these cute tiny birdies. Now in this video, we're going to start the topic of evolution and biodiversity. Specifically in this video, we're going to introduce a little bit about evolution, okay? Just the little basics that you need to understand, the crucial parts. And I thought the best way to do this is by using the story of the giraffe, okay? So look at this giraffe here, okay? It's in the safari and there's these trees, right? Now, long time ago, giraffes had short necks, kind of like this, okay? They were just like a normal horse, kind of, right? And basically, they would eat, okay? They would move around and eat the trees. So let's take this giraffe, right? We take this giraffe and it's moving, okay? Woo, 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 it's moving. And it starts eating the trees. But remember, it has quite a short neck, so it can only really reach these bottom leaves. Now, over time, these giraffes couldn't survive unless they had longer necks because all the bottom leaves were eaten and the only source of food was these top higher ones, right? So the point is, over a very long time, generations and generations, these giraffes' necks started to get slightly longer and longer with time. Each generation would have a 1 millimeter longer neck than the previous, until eventually they're as long as they are now, okay? Like real giraffes. So this is evolution, okay? Evolution is an extremely slow change in a specific trait over many generations. Let me show you. Here's the official definition that you need to remember, okay? So it's the cumulative change. Cumulative change means gradual change. Just like this neck. Every generation you almost couldn't notice the change. But if you look over thousands of years, you'll see, wow, it turned from the short neck into a really long neck. Okay, so it's a cumulative change, a very gradual change in heritable characteristics. Heritable characteristics means it's a characteristic that you inherit from your parents. If your parents are tall, you're likely to be taller. So, for example, the giraffes with the longest necks would survive and pass on their heritable characteristics to their childs. And so only children with parents with long necks would be able to be produced, okay? And so over a long time, we only find giraffes with long necks, okay? So it's a gradual change in these heritable characteristics over generations. I gotta emphasize this, generations. It doesn't happen from today till tomorrow. It takes so long, you almost don't notice it, okay? That's why if you're like, say you're 6 years old, I guarantee you when you look back when you were a kid, giraffes look the same, right? Nothing even changed in 60 years. It takes insane amounts of time, okay? That's evolution. It takes so long. Okay, so I'm just explaining the very basics, what the concept of evolution. I'm going to make a separate video, the next video, that's going to really explain why this happened. I'm just explaining what happened, but I'm going to make a video on why exactly this happened with this giraffe, okay? Why it happens. Okay, so again, to emphasize, it's really slow. It feels like working out. Sometimes when you try and get into shape, it's a long time. You feel like it takes forever. But evolution is even slower than that, okay? Because it may take you 3 months to get in shape. But for evolution, it takes generations, okay? But it pretty much feels the same. Okay, so let's take a species, okay? A species that we all like, okay? Let's take dogs. We know that dogs is technically one species, yet there are so many variations. We have dogs that look like this, beagles, German shepherds, pugs. Okay, we have insane amounts of variation. Variation means differences in the way they look, yet they're all one species. So, why is there this variation? The answer is evolution. Let me explain. A long time ago, when none of these species existed, okay, there was a wolf, okay? A wolf existed, but none of these things existed yet, okay? The wolf was the common origin. It is believed that all dogs that we know today originate from a wolf, okay? A wolf is the first sort of dog, okay? The first sort of dog. Let me explain. So let's take this wolf, okay? So long ago, there existed only wolves, okay? Only wolves, and they lived in one place. And then slowly they got so many and they started kind of splitting up and going to different locations. So for example, some of them maybe went to like one place, okay? Let's call this place, so we make this background, so they went to this place, okay? It represents a specific environment. And in this environment, you can only survive well if you have a great sense of smell. So all of the ones that didn't have a great sense of smell would pass away. And only the ones that had a good sense of smell would pass on this trait to the next generation. And so over many generations, again, thousands of years, just like the giraffe, we develop a specific type of dog, a specific breed of dog. Okay, remember, dogs are all the same species, but they're different breeds. So this environment over a long time forced only specific dogs to survive, or specific wolves to survive, so that over many generations you form a specific dog that's the best, a specific breed of dog that's the best for this particular environment. So for example, if we talk about smell, maybe over a very long time these wolves started looking like beagles, okay, because beagles have a great sense of smell. Again, this is just a basic concept, okay? It's not only going to be smell. Many things make the beagle look the way it was, okay? Because beagles are smaller and different, they have big ears, okay? Different traits, okay? I'm just using smell as an example. So let's take another one. Say another pack of this wolf, so some of them went to another location. Okay, and this location, it was important to be strong. So only the strong ones survived. And these strong ones passed on their genetics, and only their kids that were strong survived. And so over a long time, these wolves started looking like this dog here, okay? They started forming into a dog that's appropriate for this particular environment, okay? And the last example is some of these wolves went to even another location. They all split up and went to another location. And in this location, the only way you could survive is if you had a nice thick coat and had good eyesight, okay? Because it was very cold here and you couldn't see anything for miles, so having good eyesight was important. And now again, only the ones with good eyesight and a good thick coat would survive. And eventually, over a very long time, this environment formed the German Shepherd, okay? Because they have a nice thick coat, they can keep warm, and they have good eyesight compared to beagles, or this dog, perhaps, okay? So this is what I'm trying to explain, okay? All this variation happens over a long time, evolution. And all these dogs, and I'm using dogs here as an example, but in reality, this applies to any of us, okay? This applies to humans. We all look different, but we all come from a common origin, okay? We all come from a common animal. And due to our differences in environment that we were exposed to, we all started looking slightly different, okay? But again, it happened over a long time, okay? You have to bear that in mind. Now, the process of becoming so varied, having this variation from a common origin, is called divergence, okay? You diverge, you become more varied, okay? And again, the things that caused this divergence is the environment, okay? So we called all of these selection pressures. Environment is one of them, genetics is another, okay? These things caused only some animals to survive, okay, and pass on their genetics after evolution, forming all these different animals depending on the environment, okay? So that's the basis. Now we will have this guy. We all know him from Ratatouille as the critic, right? And he's going to tell you, well, prove it, okay? You're telling me we all came around through evolution, but I want you to prove it. I don't believe you. How can I believe you? And so that's true now. Now we got to prove it. And for the IB, you need to know 3 ways to prove it. 3 ways to support the concept of evolution, okay? So let's get into it. The first one is very interesting. It's called fossil record. We've all probably heard of fossils, and we all went to museums when we were younger and maybe got a bit bored by looking at all these fossils that our parents were fascinated by. But they're actually important. Let me explain. So we start off here. Okay? We start off with a fishy, okay? Or this fishy can represent any animal, okay? I'm just using a fish for this example. And this animal got old and it had some diseases and it died, okay? So this animal dies. Rest in peace. And specifically, it died on 2022, July 3rd. So this day, today. And let's say after a while, okay, so it dies and all of the meat starts disintegrating, it starts to decay, and what's left is only these hard materials, okay, the hard stuff like the shell, the bone, wood, whatever, all the hard materials, okay? And these materials, and this happens over a very long time, right? It's evolution here. This happens this is not evolution, but this is the process of death, and it happens slowly, right? It doesn't happen overnight. And so what happens is minerals in the environment surrounding it will seep into the bone or the shell, okay, and kind of get compacted and accumulate in there, okay? And once they accumulate in there, it starts hardening, okay, forming, and the bone will start disappearing. But what we have left then is all these minerals that became hard. It looks like bone, but in reality, it's just minerals that became hard, okay? And so when we look at this, we think, oh, that's bone, okay? But this represents the shape of the fish, right? This leaves evidence for how the fish looked like when it was alive, okay? And that's great. Now, why is this important? Why do we care about this? How does this prove evolution? I'll explain just now. But before I do that, I need to say something that scientists do. So when these scientists dig a hole and they discover all these fossils, they want to find out when this animal died. And so they have a technique, okay? They want to figure out when this animal died. They have this technique called radioactivity, okay? They measure the radioactivity of what's going on here. Let me explain what this means, okay? Because this is going to confuse you if this word may be confusing to you, okay? So basically, let me explain. When these animals are alive, they are made up of many elements, right? Like carbon, magnesium, whatever, all of these things. And these elements are alive, okay? Or they are still functioning, okay? And we call them, and we call this that they have full radioactivity. Look at this C, okay? We're going to pretend this is carbon. So this is one of the things that will make up what's going on here, okay? This animal died and there's still some carbon and some minerals left here. So the scientists will take these minerals, so let's say they take carbon, a sample of it, and they're going to look at it. Now, when the animal is alive, this carbon will have full radioactivity. Look, it's like fully radioactive. Radioactivity means kind of like energy. So when the animal is still alive, this carbon is fully active, fully alive in a sense. And when it dies, slowly this carbon will start losing radioactivity, okay? So you can see here, the C is getting empty. It's losing some radioactivity. And so over a long time, it will lose complete radioactivity. It will become very, very low. Now, how does this help us? So the scientists can take a sample here and look at the carbon, okay? And they can look at the carbon to see how much radioactivity it has. So say they take a carbon and the radioactivity is like this low. Then they know that this animal died a very long time ago, and they can kind of predict how long ago. And say they take another sample from another animal, and the carbon is basically full, okay? It's full of radioactivity. Then they can tell that this animal died very recently, okay? So this idea of radioactivity is to measure how active or alive these elements are in the dead fossil. And by using this, they can predict how long ago the animal was alive. And this is useful for evolution. Why? Because say they find this fossil here, they date it back with radioactivity and find that it was alive 1,000 years ago. Okay, and so they know 1,000 years ago, there was a fish that looked like this. And then they find another fossil somewhere else of a fish, and they find that, oh, this one dates back to 900 years ago. And they find that it looks slightly different than this. And then they find another sample of a fish that lived 500 years ago, and then they find it looks even slightly different than this. So over time, they can compare these fossils that they found and how long ago these animals existed, and see how these fish changed over time. And this kind of proves evolution, because it's a slow change, right? Every 100 years, there was a slow change until the present, okay? So this is how the fossil record can help us show that evolution is possible, and that evolution is how we develop, okay? So I hope this one makes sense. This is one key important one. So here is a real image of a fossil record of a fish, okay? So now this critique asks you, okay, that's one way. I want another way. I don't think this is enough of a way. Okay, so let's give them another way. The next way is called selective breeding. So this one is more interesting, more understandable, I think. So a long time ago, there was a dog that looked like this, okay? And basically, what humans started doing was that they saw this dog and they said, I see this dog very often, but I like the one the most that has the flattest face because it looks the cutest. So what they do is they don't allow the ones with the big, they only allow the ones with the flat faces to reproduce, the flattest faces to reproduce. And so over a long time, this is called selective breeding, because the people select, they specifically choose which animals or which dogs survive. So they keep having these dogs, but they choose specific ones of this species, of this breed, to survive. And so over time, only the ones with the flattest faces will be allowed to reproduce. So this is called selective breeding. You choose specific ones humans choose specific versions of these breeds to reproduce. And then over a long time, these species will start looking different because they will only choose ones with the flattest faces. So over time, you will produce a dog with a very flat face. So this is exactly how pugs came around, through selective breeding. Humans took the pugs. See, long ago, their face wasn't that flat. But the humans kept taking the ones with the flattest faces and only allowing them to reproduce. And so over time, generations of time, through evolution, all the dogs started looking like this. All the pugs started looking like this instead of this. Okay, so this proves evolution. This is another way. And this is called artificial selection, because the environment didn't cause only some of these dogs to survive and reproduce. It was humans. We artificially caused only some of them to be able to reproduce. It wasn't the environment, it was us. So it's not real selection, it's man-made, okay? So let me show you a more useful example. This is a common one. You'll probably have to, this is a good example to know for yourself, for the test, if you need to give an example. So a long time ago, this is how corn looked like, okay? Very thin, not much on it, not much to eat. And so what people did, we call this one the corn baby level. That's what I call it, okay? Just, this doesn't exist. I'm just giving it a name for you to understand. And basically, over time, again, people would only allow the biggest corn to reproduce. So they take the biggest ones, and after a while, only big ones form, okay? And so we call this now semi-pro, okay? Again, this is not a real name. I'm just making it up. Now, and then they would continue this process and only allow the biggest ones to reproduce until we have what we see nowadays, okay? This is the boss level, okay? And people do this because they wanted the most possible food out of this corn, and these small ones were useless. So over generations, many generations, it's evolution. Again, it's an example of evolution. This corn turned from what was this into this, okay? Now, that's crazy, right? And there's many other examples. So here I have a list. You can look at these and see, but you can think of an infinite amount, okay? You can apply this to any sort of thing, okay? Anything. Okay, now, again, now this guy's going to be like, oh, okay, two reasons. That's good, but I want more. I don't believe it yet. So let's prove it one more time. One more example. Homologous structures. Okay, so what do these things have in common? A frog, a bird, a whale, and a human. What do they have in common? So scientists found, after looking at the bones of these organisms, that they have something in common, actually. And it's crazy to think that we have something in common with both a whale, a bird, and a frog. Isn't that insane? So what exactly is in common about our bones? So if we look at their bones, a human, a whale, a bird, and a frog. So this is the arm, right? The fin of a whale, the wing of a bird, okay? And we can see that I color-coded it here, but we all have a similar bone structure, okay? Upper arm bone, called the humerus, a forearm bone called the radius and the ulna. You don't need to know this. And then we have the metacarpals and the carpals, okay? And the phalanges, okay? And we can see that this is there's kind of a similarity between all of these. There's wrist bones, upper arm bones, forearm bones, and fingers, right? And so scientists, based on this, came to the conclusion that eventually, a long time ago, all of us, all creatures on Earth, must have come from one common place, one common origin. Okay? They believe that all of us came from one place. Let me explain what I mean, okay? By the way, they give a name to this limb. The fact that all these limbs look the same, they called it the pentadactyl limb, okay? Pentadactyl limb. You need to remember this. This is one evidence for evolution. Let me show why. So the scientists believe that a long time ago, okay, we all came from a common origin, okay? So again, scientists believe a long time ago, we all didn't exist, okay? We came from one common organism. But this organism, there was a lot of this organism, and it split apart into different environments. And these different environments, again, this is very similar to the dog story. The wolf story I mentioned above. These different environments morphed all these different organisms to survive. So all the animals that had the ability to grab things started forming were able to survive and pass on, and eventually over evolution, again thousands of years, this star started forming the human arm, because human arm is the best at grabbing things. And maybe there's another environment where the ones that had the best ability to for example, jump like a frog, they survived, and so this formed the frog arm. And another environment had the best ability. Only the animals with the best ability to swim survived, and this over generations, again, evolution formed the fin of the whale, and so on, okay? So this is another example that they believed evolution happened, because we all have the same basic structure in our bones, and the only reason that we are different is because our environment changed us through evolution. But we all in reality came from one common origin, from one common creature that had this pentadactyl limb, right? We call this the pentadactyl limb, because penta means 5 and fingers, dactyl means fingers, the 5-finger limb, okay? And you can see over all this time, this morphed into different variations of limb, okay? Another example of evolution. So here's the definition of adaptive radiation. It's basically a word you need to know. It's the process of coming from this common origin and forming all these different limbs or structures due to the environment, okay? So quickly, homologous structures. This means homo means same and structures means structures, right? So basically, this is evidence for evolution because scientists found that we actually have homologous structures. We have a similar looking structure. Although we have different structures, we have different functions, right? The whale's fin is used for swimming, the bird's wing is used for flying, right? So homologous structures provided evidence for evolution. Although we have different structures, the same looking structure, they have different functions, okay? So here's the official definition. Homologous structures are anatomical features or structures that show similarities in shape, but not in function, okay? Completely different function. So overall, remember these 3 key things, okay? These 3 proofs for evolution.